By now, you've probably heard of the resurgence of Osama Bin Laden's letter to America. Of course you have. I'm pretty late to this ordeal. I started this script a long time ago. It doesn't matter. We're here now. What's more likely is that you've probably seen some TikTok videos where people are showing some amount of support for the letter, or saying that they've gained a new sense of understanding for why Osama Bin Laden did what he did, or showing support for some of his actions. I just want to talk about all that because it's really making my head roll. This is the letter to America. Just to give you a quick idea of the time frame, this letter was released in November of 2002, so just a little bit after a year from the 9/11 attacks. Osama opens this letter by praising Allah and claiming divine permission to fight against non-believers, with the assurance of victory for believers in Allah. He acknowledges that there is a lot of speculation as to why he 9/11 and is fighting America, and he sets out to address two questions that he sees commonly asked by the American people. First, why is he fighting America? And second, what did they want Americans to do? That's the premise for this letter. To answer the first question, he says, "We are fighting America because America struck us first. First in Palestine." He cites American support for Israel as the greatest crime, and that's a direct quote, greatest crime. He challenges this belief that the land belongs to the Jewish people, asserting that its rightful ownership is to the Arabic and Muslim peoples, even going by claims that Jewish people use as, texts in the Torah calling for the Semites to be able to return to their homeland. He calls for a proportional response to the bloodshed in Palestine. I just want to point out that I feel like a non-zero percentage amount of people that read this letter stopped right about here. This is about the end of where Osama bin Laden talks about Palestine in the letter. It's relevant to the current conflict that's going on right now, and it provides a nice little talking point. It was sort of the moment that they came for, right? Back to the letter. Osama bin Laden then talks about more widespread opposition against Islamic forces. He talks about Somalia, Chechnya, Kashmir, Lebanon. He accuses America of supporting governments in the Middle East that at the time were hindering the establishment of Sharia law, of supporting these governments that sold their oil cheaply and allegedly were surrendering to Jewish interests, basically not going to war with Israel. He says that destroying these governments has become a duty, intertwined with a broader fight against America. He then goes on to criticize America for occupying lands, supporting Jewish interests, benefiting off of stolen oil. In Iraq, specifically, he talks about over 1 million children had died in Iraq, specifically due to US sanctions. He contrasts the millions dying in Iraq and how the world seemed to just kind of turn a blind eye to it, with how 3,000 Americans died in 9/11 and the world stood up and did not sit down since. He then says there is a right for the oppressed to retaliate against their oppressor. He then goes into why he can justify 9/11 and the targeting of American citizens. He contends that America, its citizens, through their elected leaders, support Israeli interests and their occupation of the Palestinian people. He says that with their taxes, they fund aggression against Muslims worldwide. He then cites the American army, which is manned by American men and women, is deeply involved with the Israeli military. And all of this together contributes to why American citizens all have blood on their hands and they can't be considered innocent of the crimes committed by America and its allies. Talk about collective punishment, huh? With that out of the way, he goes on to the second question of the letter: what are we calling you to do? And what he's calling us to is Islam. He emphasizes Islam's kindness, its unity of God, the pursuit of justice, and everything outlined in the Quran. The second aspect of this is in contrast to everything that America is now. He wants to see the suppression and rejection of fornication, homosexuality, intoxicants, gambling, and women being sold as sex objects. OBL then says that America is the worst nation in all of history, noting its shirking of the Sharia of Allah, opting instead for just some made-up, self-made rules that they impose on themselves. I'm American, ourselves. He condemns America's reliance on usury, an act which evidently has been outlawed by all major religions. He goes on to say that the Jewish people have seized control of the economy, turning Americans into their servants, and that this is something that Benjamin Franklin warned about. I don't have a citation for that, but I doubt it was about Jewish people specifically. He decries the widespread production and distribution of intoxicants, and the acceptance of immorality as freedom, saying that our society has fallen deeper and deeper to the point of incest, an act which our morals nor our laws can condemn. He's literally doing fucking British Alabama jokes. He reminds us of President Clinton's little soiree in the Oval Office. He points this out as an example of American moral decay and how President Clinton didn't see any repercussions for those actions. He denounces gambling wholesale, says it only enriches criminals, and criticizes the commodification of women. He says the sex trade operates very deceptively under names like art and entertainment and only really serves to provide more profit for giant corporations. OBL says that America is well known for spreading diseases and calls AIDS an American satanic invention, and says that America is also notorious for environmental negligence, destroying all of the nature around us only to serve to provide more profits. He brands America as hypocritical, applying one set of standards for itself and its friends and another set of standards for everyone else. These laws, in his eyes, are seen to only serve the rich and the powerful, with Jewish influence controlling the economy, media, and policy. He criticizes the claim that America promotes freedom and democracy, saying it really only applies to the white race, while the rest of the world experiences destructive policies enacted by puppet governments. He highlights specifically in this section America's interference into Algeria, and how the Islamic Party won a democratic election, and how, in response, America unleashed government agents that suppressed the political movement. He then calls out America's seemingly arbitrary stance on weapons of mass destruction, saying that it only allows allies to possess them, and everyone else that tries to make weapons of mass destruction are labeled as criminals and are persecuted endlessly. Ditto for the arbitrary nature of how America treats war criminals. He calls out America seeking immunity for its war criminals while condemning heavily the war criminals from other nations. Despite America being the champions of human rights, he calls out specifically Guantanamo Bay as the biggest humiliation of America's existence. It is a historical embarrassment that only serves to show that America has no respect for dignity or human life. He then closes this all out with a couple more statements about specifically what he wants. He wants an immediate cessation of America's support for Israel, the Indians in Kashmir, and the Russians against the Chechens. Bin Laden advises Americans to withdraw from his lands and asks that he doesn't have to send Americans back in caskets. Finally, he asks that America interact with him on a basis of shared interest and benefits as opposed to coercion and theft. He insists on ending the support for Jewish people, warning that it will only cause more harm for America. If America fails to meet these conditions, he warns of a war with the Islamic nation, a nation of honor and respect. He points to the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan as something that America should do, follow that roadmap. He cautions that failure only awaits America, just as in past crusades. And that is the end of the letter to the American people. Okay, I paraphrased the whole thing, and let me just get this out there. I think Osama Bin Laden's a really terrible person. Hot take, I know. I don't know how much he really truly cared for the people in Palestine. It feels like more of his actions were influenced by just hating Jewish people broadly, hating secular governments, just hating America at large. Let's not downplay the hating secular governments part. He spent a whole third of this document talking about the downfalls of having a secular government, about throwing up walls between church and state. That part where he justifies the killing of American civilians because they pay taxes and vote for elected officials. I'm pretty sure if I followed that, I could justify the killing of hundreds of millions, if not billions of people. So I'm gonna no thanks on that. Also, this letter is just like laden with JQ levels of conspiracy. Just multiple times throughout this letter, he asserts that Jewish people run the American government. He goes back to that over and over again. And to be fair, there were parts of this that, like, I kind of agreed with, right? Like, his point about Guantanamo is true. His point about America just destroying its environment, I find to be true. But I'm gonna talk about that a little bit later on into the video. Because what are my thoughts, really, if not another leaf floating in this stream that we call the internet? What you really came here for is to hear the reactions that I have to the reactions that people have posted to this letter on TikTok. I hope that sentence made sense. There's two very common refrains I hear from people that show support for this letter. It's just shocking because I always thought that Osama Bin Laden just like hated freedom or America. I didn't know why he was doing everything. Firstly, at the very least, just going by this letter, he definitely hated America and freedom. I get what you're saying. I'm sympathetic, right? What you're saying is that you don't feel like you got the full story. You feel like you were lied to or misled. I just want to point out his reasonings and this letter weren't hidden. Up until like 2 weeks ago, of course. The Guardian removed the letter from their website. That was a pretty fucking bozo move. But before that, for about 2 decades, over 2 decades, this letter was free and available to the public. I feel like it's just that nobody cared until now, because it aligns with the current conflict. For a majority of people that you talk to, this opinion of he just hated America and freedom, it feels like most people that have that opinion kind of just got it from each other. It's the public understanding of what happened with 9/11 and why Osama Bin Laden did what he did. And if your issue exists with the public understanding of a situation as opposed to like the reality, I'm just gonna clue you in now, you're in for a lot of anger in your life. If you're not jiving with what like your coworkers or your parents are telling you, just go look into it. Literally 10, 12 minutes on Wikipedia and you'll have like a deeper understanding and a good roadmap for where to go from there. The second point I hear a lot is, well, I mean, he was a bad guy, but like he's making some good points. It's like I said earlier, I do think that he made a lot of good points, but I don't think in like a majority of scenarios anybody would accept that as a reasoning for liking something. Like a Nazi, if all he had to say was, well, Hitler was, you know, a terrible guy, but, you know, I read Mein Kampf and he said some really good stuff. If that's all it took for it to be okay to really condone something, then we'd probably see a lot more mask-off Nazis walking around. Like a general tip, if you want to bring someone over to your side of the argument for something, and you have a choice between 2 people to cite, if one of those people has like infinitely less baggage attached to them, always cite that person. That person's always going to be the person that you'll want to like put out in front of everybody. This is important because all of the stuff, all of the cogent points that Osama bin Laden made in the letter to the American people have been made by other people who haven't said also horrible, abhorrent shit. And if you're wondering why that's an important thing to do, let's consider a hypothetical here. You say to me, well, in the letter to American people, there's a lot of examples of America being a terrible imperialist power. I then get to say, are you really citing the dude that wanted to install a worldwide religious government? And then we have to have that conversation. Just Myers everything down. When you could have shortcut all of this extra BS by just citing like Angela Davis. That's not my citation. I saw that in the Christian Divine TikTok. All credit goes to him. Just in general, this is like a personal bone I have to pick. On TikTok, it's mainly people who were on the left that really showed a lot of support for the letter to the American people. And that is like buck wild to me. A few months ago on TikTok, there was a big round of videos And all of the discussion in these videos was talking about whether or not Nazis deserve basic human rights like the right to live, the right to eat, the right to work. And there was a lot of people saying that no, they don't deserve these rights and were joking about killing them. And a lot of their argument was predicated on this idea that Nazis promote an ideology which is harmful to marginalized people, specifically like Jewish people and LGBTQ people. And now that this letter, in which Osama Bin Laden blatantly espouses hating Jewish people and LGBTQ people, comes to the surface, but because it kind of aligns with their ideology about the current conflict, there's this weird attempt I've seen from some people to kind of wash away some of these sins. Sins that just a few months ago were worthy of people dying and not being able to have food or water or anything. People are just trying to kind of wash that away. Either Osama Bin Laden and Nazis deserve to never eat again and die, or they don't. And I feel like there should be, a stronger feeling about this coming from people on the left. And with that little cherry on top, I'm gonna cut the video here. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you get the chance, please subscribe to this YouTube page. I should probably go to bed now. Bye!